Welcome back to the Wise League podcast, everyone. Last night was another successful, I'd say, debate of the Democrats.
Successful debate. I feel like if we're talking successful debates, there were 3 of them, even though there have been 4.
Well, there's been more than 4 because they had to split some of them into 2 nights.
Yes, but night 2 back in, what was it, like July?
Yeah.
Was completely unproductive. It was basically everyone going off and saying Barack Obama sucks for some reason, even though he's extremely popular.
Yeah.
Joe Biden absolutely sucks.
Yep.
But all of us suck and we have no idea what we're doing. We're just going to sit here and argue and yell at each other.
The tone-
for
That was
basically
extremely
2 hours.
boring and very repetitive.
Yes.
It wasn't boring. It was interesting,
Well,
but
yeah,
it was
still.
very unsubstantive.
But
there was no policy.
The tone has
debated.
completely changed because now everyone saw Warren as the new frontrunner or one of the co-frontrunners and went after her instead of Biden. And Biden just kind of slipped through the cracks unscathed this debate. He didn't really harm himself. Like in the first debate, or the first 2 debates, he had some awkward moments, text Joe to 30330 kind of thing. That was a little bit awkward. And some people saw him as stumbling or not wouldn't be a very strong nominee.
I'd say his biggest stumble was Kamala Harris in the first debate.
Oh,
that could have been a fatal blow.
But that's the thing with how candidates go in and out. Harris spiked to like 10% in the polls. She was suddenly in like 3rd or 4th place for a while, and then now she's at like 4 or 5% or something.
Well, I mean, that was a logical progression because she criticized Biden on his position on busing, and then like the day after didn't know her own position on busing and was unclear about it, and also on the debate stage was like, yeah, I support Medicare for all, and then came out and said, yeah, not really. So at that point, she didn't really know what she stood for. At least that's what it seemed, and she just kind of fell apart after, and she didn't have any better moments. Like she came out then in the July debate. And of all people, Tulsi Gabbard comes out and is like, I'm going to criticize you on your record as a prosecutor in California. And she wasn't prepared for that at all. And you have to be prepared for those kind of things if you're going to be a top-tier candidate.
And speaking of Gabbard, Gabbard and Tom Steyer
Requalified.
We did learn his name yesterday.
Isn't this the first debate he qualified for?
So this is the first one.
I think this is his first debate.
I have a little bit of background.
Tulsi Gabbard has gone to the...
Yeah, no, I know.
She went
She's
to
been
June
there
and
before.
July, but
Yeah.
he was...
Well, so
I think he's new.
The thing about Tom Steyer is earlier this year, like I think maybe in like first few months of 2019, he came out and said, I'm not running for president, I will not run. And because Tom Steyer. Because in 2018 he had a lot to do with the midterms. His PAC spent there were certain congressional races that he definitely like flipped for the Democrats. I believe some upsets. One race in Oklahoma in particular, and so he had a lot to do with the 2018 midterms. He was kind of speculated. He's very wealthy. He's a billionaire. And Tom Steyer said he wouldn't run, and then a few months ago, like a month or 2 ago or 3 months ago, he said he would run again. And suddenly he's somehow polling at like 7% in Nevada. He was polling around there in South Carolina. He's doing kind of okay in New Hampshire and Iowa because he's done very aggressive TV ads and stuff. He doesn't really seem to have much of a ground game, but he does have a lot of advertisements, so people that aren't really tuned in but just watch cable TV might say they're going to vote for him. I don't know how far he's going to go, but to me, there was nothing notable about his debate performance. I don't remember anything he said. What do you guys think? I literally don't remember anything he said.
I didn't pay much to Steyer, but nothing memorable.
No, I don't think for the 2, or really, I guess not. It's not 2. There were several people who qualified this one, but for the main 2 that really needed to stand out, Tulsi Gabbard and Tom Steyer, neither of them had a standout moment.
No.
Neither of them had a really great debate performance, in my opinion. I think both of them are on the chopping block. I don't think either of them is going to... Well, maybe Steyer will. But Gabbard definitely I don't think is going to qualify in November.
She has somewhat of a weird base.
It is a weird base.
So,
she's got some weird positions.
Yeah, I read
She's definitely not traditional.
Yeah, she is unusual because she's known for being very anti-war. She has a lot of supporters on the right, which is kind of interesting. And also, she's well known for, in the past, when she was a state representative in Hawaii, being very socially conservative. Her father made advertisements against gay marriage on TV. She also was apparently pro-life, and she's still more of a moderate on abortion than some of the other Democrats in the field.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty interesting. I read an article recently about a town in southeastern Iowa that's very well known for being very unusual politically. I can't remember the name, but basically there's some kind of temple there, and they really like Tulsi Gabbard and Marianne Williamson. That's where, like, if you look on the
Oh my!
yeah, if you look on the New York Times did donor maps for all the presidential candidates, like where their donors are coming from, like a county map. And Gabbard and Williamson both had like big spots in that one town in Iowa, which is really interesting. But so Gabbard does have some kind of appeal. She always starts her speeches with aloha, which is kind of like hello or goodbye or peace or something like that in.
It's a Hawaiian greeting.
Yeah, exactly. And so Gabbard's pretty interesting. I don't think she's going to go anywhere, but I do think she might qualify. I wouldn't not count her out. Same thing with Steyer. I think he could qualify. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to have another 12-person debate? There's probably going to be one or two people that don't qualify from this one. Or drop out before then, actually.
Well, I think we have to address the elephant. There's two, I guess technically three big elephants in the room that changed this debate. Like three big things that changed from the last debate. Because since September, the House Democrats have opened an impeachment inquiry into the president.
Right.
Warren has become a co-frontrunner with Biden.
Arguably. I think arguably.
Based on the way that they treated her in the debate and the polls, yes, she's a co-equal with Biden. Maybe just a little less. But she's working her way there.
I get what you're saying.
And then there's also Bernie Sanders' his heart attack.
Correct.
That's also,
I think Bernie Sanders proved that he's still a player. He did the same as he could ever be expected to.
Yeah, but I feel like it's not going to...
Bernie is very endearing to some people. He never changes. He uses the same expressions and the same arguments.
Yes.
And that's why I feel like his poll numbers are going to stay the same. He's not going to gain or lose support. Yeah. His health issues... obviously, he's gotten better now, and people are reassured about that.
Well, I don't know. I honestly don't think that this debate alone is going to qualm that.
So the thing is, a lot of the Democratic candidates are very elderly.
Three top polling candidates
exactly.
are over at least 70.
They're over 70. Biden and Sanders are both close to 80.
Yeah,
I think both of them would be like 78 or 77 when they would take
if they would take off.
Because Bernie's right now, I think he's 78, Biden's 76, and Warren is the youngin at 70.
Yeah, she's like right 70.
That's older than any president ever elected. The oldest president ever elected is Donald Trump, contrary to what some people might think. He's like 72, I think.
Yeah, he was. No, it's a 5. Yeah, it'd be like 72 because there's a 5-year difference between him and Sanders.
Yeah. So, that was pretty interesting to me. I don't actually really disagree with what you have to say about Warren. I think she kind of is the co-frontrunner. That's why people went after her. She's been rising in the polls. I do think it's fair to say that Biden has an advantage because of how polling is in early states. It's pretty much tied in 3 states, and he has a very clear lead in South Carolina.
Oh, absolutely.
And also the Super Tuesday states, he leads most of them. He's doing very well in California. So I think...
his lead is being cut in California.
His lead is being cut in everywhere, but he still has an edge. And I also think after this debate, Warren might go downhill a little bit because of her performance last night. Well, it wasn't bad. She had trouble defending a lot of her policy positions. I watched the post-mortem analysis about an hour ago on CNN. It's the day after the debate for listeners, by the way. And they were talking about how Warren didn't really have an answer to how... her Medicare for All proposal would raise taxes on the middle class.
Right.
Bernie admitted it, but he said
that's her Achilles heel.
Costs would go down. And the problem is, Warren hasn't really refuted it. She's kind of talking like a typical politician, in my opinion, sidestepping the issue.
Well, what she's doing is, at least this is what I see it as, because I'll be honest, I'm a big Elizabeth Warren supporter. I love Elizabeth Warren. I have a sticker of her. I'm already planning to vote for her. I love her so very much. But in this case, what she's trying to do is she recognizes if she comes out right and says this is going to raise taxes for the middle class, she thinks it's going to cause her more problems. I think she's causing herself more problems by not admitting that it's going to raise taxes for the middle class. Yes. But what she needs to say in tandem, and what she's kind of saying now, is she's saying, hey, costs are going to go up for different people because we're going to put different taxes on different people.
Right.
But your co-pays and stuff are going to go down, and your net cost is going to go down. What she should really be saying instead is, yeah, your taxes are going to go up to pay for this, but the cost of your healthcare is going to go down so significantly that it's going to go down more than your taxes are going to go up. And so netly, you're going to be saving more money. You're going to be not spending as much money.
Right.
But it just depends on where that chunk is going. Instead of putting it towards healthcare, you're putting it towards a little less of it towards taxes, which is what she needs to be saying. But she's not.
I don't disagree. But, and I want to make this clear, too. I've given all the candidates a fair shake. I've read Biden's book, Sanders' book, Klobuchar's book, Mayor Pete's book, Buttigieg or whatever, and also Warren's book. And And also, I've watched a lot of stuff on them. I've watched all the debates, obviously, and read so many articles about them, looked at their electoral performances and such forth. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's quite honest to propose something like Medicare for All, because I think, honestly, it would never, ever pass the Senate in a million years. The Senate will probably stay in Republican hands in 2020. And I think, honestly, Warren and Sanders are probably lying to the American people if they say it's something that's actually going to happen.
Right. Well, let's be realistic. Any Medicare plan, any healthcare plan the Democrats put forward, if they don't have a supermajority in the Senate, is going to get shot down regardless.
No.
The Republicans want to get... Let's be real. Come on, let's be real. No. That's what Barack Obama wanted to do back with Obamacare. That didn't happen.
Public opinion has shifted, though. People are more supportive of government-funded healthcare.
Public opinion on things like gun control is in the 70s, and yet Republicans still don't do anything about it. Let's be realistic here. If any bill regarded to healthcare comes before the United States Senate with Mitch McConnell at the helm,
he's the Grim Reaper. That's what he calls himself.
It's not going to happen.
Dead on arrival.
It doesn't really matter how progressive it is. Mm-hmm. And Pete Buttigieg brought up this concept. I believe it was at the second or maybe the third debate that we have to stop worrying what Republicans are going to do.
They're going to call us socialists.
Yeah, they're going to call us socialists if if the Democrats embrace a progressive policy. They're going to call the Democrats socialists if they just want to keep Obamacare, completely leave it as it is. They're going to do it regardless. So my thought on it is, why not fight for the more ambitious policy that, although maybe has a less likelihood of passing, it's maybe by about 1%, because any healthcare plan a Democrat puts forward is going to get shot down by the Republicans.
I actually disagree. I think that some of the less extreme healthcare plans are more viable through the legislature of the country, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Especially, we should talk about the person who I think had a little bit of a breakout moment. All of the analysis of the debate have focused on this one person who I've been hoping for, praying for.
I call her an underdog. A little bit. I don't think she's she's not the top runner, but she's a bit of an underdog.
She's an underdog for sure, but I think she will see a spike in the polling in the next few days. Is Amy Klobuchar, who I fully support.
Senator from Minnesota.
Minnesota. I was going to say California, but that's
no. She's from Minnesota, and Amy.
yeah,
she's irrelevant now.
And
the Dems love her, but we don't.
I've been on the Lies Duke podcast.
I've been so impressed by her since before she announced. I knew of her. She has the most effective record in the Senate. She calls herself a pragmatic progressive. Mm-hmm. She's not really a moderate. She's a progressive who holds a lot of the same values, but has a reasonable and logical way of approaching them and trying to get them done. And she has friends in the Senate that are Republicans.
All of them have friends in the Republicans.
Not all of them.
Well, maybe not working relationship. Well,
no, she does have a working relationship.
With who?
And with a lot of Republican senators. Did you hear her quote about John McCain last night?
Well, okay, let's be real. This is that's John McCain we're talking about. It's not like we're talking about Richard Blumenthal.
There was an article. There was an article that came out.
Richard Blumenthal's. Never mind.
There was an article that came out
I said Richard
after
Blumenthal.
She announced of a bunch of Republican senators from very dark red states that are very conservative, saying they hold her in very high regard and she's a good legislator. And
she also has a great electoral history in a state that Trump lost by about 5%.
No, 1%. Trump lost Minnesota by 1%.
Was it 1%?
Yeah, 1%.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, 1.5%. And Trump lost Minnesota by 1.5%. His campaign also plans to spend $30 million there. Jeez. In the first time in over 50 years or something that Republicans have really made a serious play for Minnesota. Because he probably could have won it in 2016, but he had one staffer on the ground in Minnesota. Nothing. So now that he's trying, he could win Minnesota. But my point is, Klobuchar is someone who has repeatedly won in landslides. She's been elected 3 times to the Senate in Minnesota, most recently being 2018. All of them by over 20-point margins in a very, very purple state, winning very, very red counties. She won 43 counties that Trump won in 2016 in her last election. And she was also the district attorney of Hennepin County, which includes Minneapolis, for 8 years before that, and she won a very, very close race the first time.
Well, I think her biggest issues are going to be if she were to be let's just assume for a second she's going to be the nominee. I think she faces 2 major issues. One, she kind of faces not the same, but a similar vibe to Hillary Clinton that she's not enthusiastic. People aren't enthusiastic.
People are enthusiastic about her. That's the thing.
But it's not in the way that people were enthusiastic and are enthusiastic about Donald Trump. people are extremely enthusiastic about him. If you look at the Trump supporter
surrounding
the base of Trump
his
is
base. Very,
that's not going to change.
They're very passionate. They're, I mean, I don't want to say psychopathic, but they're very.
Oh my god! Once your podcast comes out, Trump supporters are psychopathic.
No.
That's how we get shut down.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, I know. No, that was a joke. For legal reasons, that was a joke.
Continue, Graham.
Yeah, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, but they're very committed. They're very passionate about who they support, and yeah, they aren't. I mean, like Clinton, you don't see people saying like, "Oh, I'm a Hillary supporter." No, you see people saying, "I'm a Trump supporter."
Yeah, and I think, so that's the first issue that I think she faces.
Well,
the second issue I think she faces is she's coming from a mostly white industrial Midwest. Sorry, I had to say it. Industrial Midwest had to make its way into this. Industrial Midwest state. And I feel like she's going to have issues connecting with one of the biggest party blocks.
Yep.
Which is minorities.
For sure.
Like African Americans, I feel like in particular are going to be something that she... Because I think all of the like Midwestern or Northeastern candidates struggle a little bit with African Americans.
I disagree. African Americans in recent years have voted very, very largely Democratic. And Hillary Clinton lost partially because of low African American turnout.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that Klobuchar is going to do any worse with that block. And Klobuchar is trying to appeal to every American. She's not talking only to people that live in cities or...
Well, that's what Hillary
she's
Clinton
talking to people that live in rural and suburban areas. Hillary Clinton did not do that.
Well,
she did not
the
spend...
majority...
basically, she didn't spend a minute in Wisconsin, or many parts of the Midwest.
But Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa are states like Minnesota.
They're the states that Klobuchar could win.
I feel like there's states that Klobuchar could win, but at the same time, I feel like there are places like Detroit where she's going to need to outperform Hillary Clinton with African Americans.
No,
one of the reasons Barack Obama won
to.
against John McCain and won against what was his face, Mitt Romney, was that he had overwhelming support from African Americans. They came out in droves.
It does not necessarily always have to do with turnout. It comes with convincing swing voters that you are someone that will be a president for everyone. That's what Klobuchar always emphasizes. She's a president for everyone. She's focusing on practical solutions. And it's gotten worse, in my opinion, since the 2016 election, which had more of a populistic tone, with freshman congresswomen being constantly under fire by the Republican Party and Fox News and the President of the United States. It's going to be effective. Bernie Sanders is endorsed today by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and two other members of the squad, and I think that's very, very harmful to the Democratic Party and harmful to America, because the American people do not endorse his brand of socialism, in my opinion, based on polling. Medicare for All is not as popular as it was once seen as.
Don't get me started on Cortez. She's quite something.
Quite something. That's a big deal.
I really have something against people that are trying to destroy the notion of the Democratic Party as the Big Ten party. You know, we need to be tolerant of other views.
We do, but I feel at the same time that the issue with the current Democratic Party is that it's kind of reeling, and has been reeling for years now, for decades really, from fear of Republican retribution. Because really what they all seem to be doing is they just don't want to go far enough, because there was a time when the Democratic Party went really far. In between, like, when Democrats like took control in the 1930s and like dominated American politics until into the 60s. I mean, we passed things like Social Security, Glass-Steagall, Medicare itself, Medicaid. I mean,
Those
so
are
many
things that were needed.
Huge social programs that were, but they were the party of big structural change. And then kind of when the rise of conservatism, the Reagan Revolution started occurring, they didn't do that. When they took back power in the 90s, we see agreements like the crime bill, which now most Democrats and even a lot of Republicans have come out against. The welfare reform, which was considered a betrayal of many minorities and many individuals who relied on wealth or on
90s, right?
Welfare,
90s,
welfare.
Yeah,
that was the idea that Democrats were becoming more moderate, that they were moving to the right, and that I feel like the current progressives that are being elected are representing more of that New Deal style of democratic idealism. That's what they're representing. And now you can disagree on how they're doing it, and I certainly would agree with you in some cases that they go maybe a little too far or they put other people in jeopardy. But I do feel like this is a conversation the Democratic Party needs to have. We can't just say, no, we don't want to talk about you. You shouldn't be running for national office simply because you're farther left than most of the Democratic Party.
Well,
we have to have these debates.
We need to also look at electoral success and look what succeeds. The 40 Democrats that flipped seats from red to blue in 2018 and flipped the House of Representatives for us were almost all moderates who would probably be primaried by the Justice Democrats if they had the opportunity because they're not as progressive. But that's not a bad thing because they were able to win in red districts. And we need to look at that too. We're not going to be able to compete if we don't nominate someone that can appeal to a wider voting bloc. That's what we saw in 2018. The people that were nominated that were more to the left lost competitive seats, like gubernatorial races in Florida and Georgia. A House seat in Nebraska and Kentucky would have been won if we had nominated someone that was more competitive as a nominee.
I feel like Stacey Abrams was the right candidate to nominate in Georgia. I don't feel there was a stronger candidate to nominate against Brian Kemp. And there
was Stacey Evans, who was also a very potentially good nominee. She was,
but I feel like Stacey Abrams was better.
I don't know about that. I mean,
and I feel like Stacey Abrams isn't even that. She's not extremely progressive. She's not the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren.
I don't mean to interject, but I think we've gone quite off on a tangent.
And that's not about the debate.
We're talking about it though because
we're talking about right now. This is about politics. This is not about the debate. We should let's try to center back onto what happened during the debate.
My point was
specific quibbles.
A lot of people have said in the media, and I agree with this, is that Klobuchar has had her first really good debate performance where she stood out.
I agree that she did really well. Like I was very surprised. Like I didn't really support. I'm not going to say didn't support, but I didn't really know much nor really care about Klobuchar. But besides
me, what I've said to you,
but seeing her getting all the screen time and being really well said and outspoken, I'm getting into Klobuchar and also. Although her opening remarks were very scripted, as she was like, "Oh, this doesn't not make America great again. This is." I
liked it though.
Yeah,
it was.
But
it was a ploy to She loves her puns.
Yeah,
she loves her puns and her jokes.
That's the thing. She's very Minnesota nice. She's the kind of person that puts recipes for hot dish casseroles on her campaign website. I'm not even joking. And she makes all kinds of jokes at Iowa events. That's what makes her so personable. Her book is called The Senator Next Door. It's kind of like, oh, she's someone that could be your neighbor. And she first got into politics because she was forced to leave the hospital a day after she gave birth.
Oh, that's right.
And she lobbied for it, and she got her bill passed, and then she ran for district attorney, and now she's a senator. So she has a story to tell. I liked that. I thought she did well because the other debate she was kind of lackluster.
She started off as one of the people saw something wrong in the system.
Yeah,
like Obama said, put on your shoes, go out and protest. I mean, she didn't protest, but she, like you said, lobbied for it. Ran for district attorney.
District attorney.
Mm-hmm. She made her way up, and now she's a senator.
Yes,
yeah. That's how.
I also think Mayor Pete did pretty well.
She did.
Mayor Pete, and Amy Klobuchar were really the foils to Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's performance wasn't necessarily really bad. It was just she, for the first, which I think as a Warren supporter, I was happy to see that. With all of the candidates attacking her, they're sending the message that she's the front runner. She's the front runner, and she's the one that they're afraid of. Biden was the one that they went after constantly in all the other three debates. This time they went after Warren. Some of them, I feel like Beto O'Rourke's quibble with Elizabeth Warren over the wealth tax. I feel like she had a pretty strong response to him on that.
Beto just did not do well at all.
That he was sitting there talking about, we can't be dividing up Americans, and she was like, I don't think it's, unfair to say that if you, get rich off of American taxpayers and off of the American people, that you be asked to pitch in to help educate more people so that they can be like you, so that more people like you can exist. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing, and I think that was a good response to him. I think she had good responses in other areas, too, when Kamala Harris was trying to goad her into saying that Twitter should kick Trump off of...
Oh, that was terrible.
That was not good.
Off of their... Yeah.
Kamala Harris is trying too hard to have another breakout moment. I think it was the first debate or the second, the first or the second debate, it was the second actually. Kamala Harris went after Joe Biden about the busing thing.
No, that was the first.
The first, okay, that was the first.
It was the second night of the first.
Suddenly, Kamala Harris surges like 10% in the polls. She was like second or third place for a while, and then now she's at like 4 or 5% or something like that. She's pretty close to like the Booker Klobuchar kind of lower tier level.
She just
mid-tier.
went under Buttigieg.
Exactly.
In recent weeks.
Exactly. And she's just done nothing to impress. She's trying way too hard to have another breakout moment. It's just not working out for her.
Yeah.
The thing about Trump's Twitter account was, I think, kind of a bad thing. Saying that we should force Trump to shut down his Twitter account is just, I think, an un-American thing to do.
Un-American.
It shows that,
people
Trump,
are willing to attack the Constitution.
Trump's,
it plays into his handbook.
Yes, Trump supporters would see that as, the rabid left or something like that, trying to shut down our viewpoints. They don't care about what we think.
Exactly.
And we shouldn't silence people. We should call them out.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Kamala Harris can call Trump out all she wants, and I usually would 100% agree with her. But we shouldn't force him to shut down his Twitter account.
No, I think Elizabeth Warren, by focusing more on the idea of enforcing antitrust laws, I think that was a smart maneuver by her to avoid that. I think Klobuchar and Buttigieg, though, when they were attacking her on Medicare for All, they did a really good job of doing so. Mm-hmm. I love Elizabeth Warren. I'm a supporter of Medicare for All, but I will admit that was her weak point. That is her Achilles heel. That, if she doesn't address that, could hurt her campaign. Now, I don't think she's going to go down all the way to... I don't think she's going to have a Harris-like collapse.
No,
I think she's still going to be a top-tier candidate. It's just a debate whether or not she's going to be in the Bernie Sanders tier or the Joe Biden tier.
She's kind of at the Joe Biden tier right now.
She's at the Joe Biden tier.
She could sink a few points, but I don't
think there's going to be major movement.
Not really
on her part.
I think Klobuchar and Buttigieg might gain a few points.
Yeah. Which
and
I think that's...
time draws on and episode comes to a close, I think we should kind of bring things. Yeah, bring things not abruptly, but
some final thoughts. What do you think, Graham?
I think generally Klobuchar did really well. Again, Beto. Just in general, like from his midterm run, coming off of a loss isn't really a good decision.
No, it was not a good decision.
But
yeah.
Again, these are all personal opinions, but also generally Klobuchar did well.
Yeah.
Biden didn't kind of suffered, but again, Warren
Booker
did
was
stand her
okay.
ground.
Booker was
okay.
halfway decent. But okay, here's one issue I did have with the debate, though. They ended up I get why they wanted to end off on this way, but they ended off on the question of Ellen DeGeneres and the George W. Bush. The idea that you should be friends, and in a certain context, yes, I understand that. But at a town hall, yeah, fair question. But in a debate with limited time, Ellen DeGeneres' relationship with George W. Bush doesn't really have an impact. And I would have liked to see things like several candidates tweeted about this. Things like climate change. There was no debate about climate change in a 3-hour debate. Nothing about climate change.
Speaking of which, climate change is something that a lot of citizens care about. Of course, me and Ethan were two of the organizers for the Elmhurst Climate Strike. We had a bunch of guest speakers. Graham was there. He took some pictures. And it was a really, really good event. A lot of Americans care about climate change and environmental issues in general.
Even Republicans.
A lot of Republicans do. We had a Republican speaker, too. And it was kind of disappointing that they did not address that. It was something really important that they should have asked. Yes. They touched on it in previous debates, so I'm not too upset about it. But some people did point that out. And so I think they should have maybe reverted that question to something more policy-based. It wasn't a bad question. I think it's important that we focus on friendships across the aisle, but I don't think it was necessarily important enough to have as the closing question take up 20 minutes or whatever it took up.
And one more other thing, impeachment.
Yeah,
that was because we kind of.
I don't want to draw this up, but impeachment.
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, but didn't really get into it. Because impeachment. Because I feel like a lot of the candidate, like Elizabeth Warren, I'm sorry I keep bringing her up. I love her, but she has been in support of impeachment since the Mueller report came out. Yes. But a lot of Democrats, like Joe Biden, for example, has not been for impeachment for a long time. He's like, let's just...
Tulsi Gabbard was anti-impeachment.
Yeah, and so now they're kind of coming... since the whole thing with...
Hunter Biden and
Ukraine.
And
Zelensky and, the Ukrainian president, that changed. I think that one of his issues now is how does he address that? Because it's kind of like the Clinton email scandal. There's nothing illegal there, but there's a whole bunch of questionable decision making that is ethics related questions that are legitimate.
We don't want to turn it into a witch hunt either. That's where I'm pro impeachment, but I also don't think that it's something that's electorally a good strategy in some cases. But
yeah.
Okay. Also, before we end, we should mention that we forgot about Andrew Yang. He was
Yang Gang.
He was. He also was kind of a little bit hesitant about impeachment. He went after Warren in one case. I didn't catch the whole thing because we were talking about other stuff.
It was when she was they were talking about automation, and she was like, one of the things that causes, or that there's a lot of different reasons for people losing jobs, and that automation is one of them, but isn't the main one. She was talking more about how businesses were moving out, how they were going to other countries, outsourcing.
It's really relevant in Ohio, where the debate was held.
Yes,
and actually, I just watched a couple hours ago. There was a news conference with Andrew Yang on CNN with Wolf Blitzer, where he was also still in Ohio, and he was talking about how the debate went and about automation and stuff like that. That's part of his big thing, so, and also the universal basic income. So Yang is someone to watch, but honestly, all of his debate performances, in my opinion, have been kind of underwhelming because he has this big internet base and also just kind of like memes and stuff. But he hasn't really shown in the debate. I think maybe he's just not a very flamboyant public speaker or something. No. He hasn't stood out to me. No. Also, we forgot about Castro, but I don't really think he stood out at all.
So kind of to wrap up, I mean, what does this debate mean for the Democratic primary?
Right.
It means Elizabeth Warren will now face much heavier scrutiny on her plans and on what she says, because she is now not only in the polls, but is considered by other candidates
bigger stakes,
a front runner, or if not the front runner. And that there's going to be maybe minimal polling movement from some of the lower tier candidates.
I think Klobuchar might be up to the middle tier now.
Maybe did like the Buttigieg tour.
Yes.
I don't. She's not. None of them are making a significant enough change that the nature of this primary.
Nothing like that. The Kamala Harris the first time. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
So there might be a little bit of movement, but it's not the kind of thing that was a decisive debate that ruined or gained a lot for any candidate.
Yes.
So I think that's I think basically this just solidified that it really is at least a two-person race, and there's some more options that are viable. But really, it's Warren versus Biden at this point, honestly. For the most part.
Yes, agreed.
Well, thank you very much. This has been the Wise Duke
podcast.
Wise Duke podcast on the Democratic debate.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.